All right, today we're diving into a story of beautiful deception. We're talking about how a really popular garden plant, one you might admire for its striking looks, also happens to produce one of the most potent toxins known to science.
So let me just start with a question. What if I told you that a poison so powerful it's been considered a biological weapon could be growing right now in your own backyard, or maybe even in a big decorative pot on your neighbor's patio?
Well, the poison we're talking about is ricin. It's what's known as a toxic albumin, which is just a fancy way of saying it's a naturally occurring toxic protein. And it's found in the seeds of the castor oil plant. And let me be super clear here, this isn't just some mild poison. It's one of the most lethal natural substances we've ever discovered.
To really put this into perspective, ricin is so dangerous that it's officially classified as a biological agent under the UN's Chemical Weapons Convention. I mean, that puts it in the same category as things like sarin gas and anthrax. So yeah, we're not just talking about a poisonous plant here, we're talking about a potential weapon.
So, where on earth does this stuff come from? Well, the answer's kind of funny because it's been hiding in plain sight this whole time, inside a plant that a lot of people think is just drop-dead gorgeous.
Let me introduce you to Ricinus communis, but you probably know it as the castor bean plant. Come on, you've probably seen it. It's a really popular ornamental plant, and people love it for these huge, dramatic, star-shaped leaves. It also grows these spiky, interesting-looking seed pods, and it's inside those pods that all the danger is hiding.
You know, here's a weird little fact for you. The plant's scientific name, Ricinus, is actually the Latin word for tick. Why? Because someone, way back when, thought the seeds with their mottled pattern looked a whole lot like a blood-filled tick. Kind of unsettling, right? And maybe it's a little bit of foreshadowing from Mother Nature herself. Okay, so this is probably the big question on your mind. If these beans are so deadly, how is castor oil safe? I mean, we use that for all sorts of things, right? Well, it all comes down to how it's made. For the poison to get out, the hard shell of the seed has to be cracked open. But when you make castor oil, the seeds are pressed and then heated, and that heat completely destroys the ricin protein. It makes the final oil totally harmless. So we know the ricin is tucked away inside that seed. But what actually happens if it gets inside of you? Let's take a look at how this toxin works on a cellular level. The best way to think of ricin is as a tiny cellular saboteur. It is incredibly efficient. It doesn't just attack a cell from the outside. No, it gets inside and then just systematically starts shutting down its most important operations. It basically causes a complete system failure from within. The process is terrifyingly simple. First, the ricin molecule gets into one of your cells. Once it's in, it goes straight for the ribosomes. Those are the cell's little protein-making factories. Ricin completely stops some from working, which brings all protein production to a screeching halt. And since proteins do literally everything a cell needs to do, from repairing itself to sending signals, the cell just can't function anymore. It dies. And when enough cells die, entire organs start to fail. So what does this microscopic attack actually look like from the outside for the person who's been poisoned? Well, it depends entirely on how they were exposed to it. How bad the poisoning gets really boils down to two things: how it got into your body, did you eat it, breathe it in, or was it injected? And of course, the dose. The more direct the route and the bigger the dose, the faster and more devastating the effects are going to be. As you can see here, the symptoms are all over the map. If you eat it, you're looking at horrific gastrointestinal issues within just a few hours. If you breathe it in, it goes straight for your lungs. Skin contact? That's the least dangerous. But injection, that is by far the worst. It causes a rapid, total collapse of the body's systems and, almost certainly, death. So how much does it actually take? For a grown adult, chewing and swallowing as few as 1 to maybe 10 castor beans can be a fatal dose. And the key word there is chewed. If you swallow a seed whole, its tough outer coating might actually save you. But if that shell is broken, the poison gets out. And once the symptoms start, the progression is just terrifyingly fast. Death can happen in as little as 36 hours. If someone ingests it, their entire circulatory system can collapse within 2 days. It is a swift, brutal shutdown of the body. Okay, so this brings us to what is obviously the most important question. If someone is exposed to this, what can be done? What's the miracle cure? What's the specific antidote that can swoop in and reverse the effects of this awful poison?
There isn't one. There is no antidote for ricin poisoning. Period.
So, with no antidote, what can doctors even do? Well, the only option is what's called supportive care. They can't stop the poison itself, so the entire focus shifts to just managing the damage. They'll use IV fluids to fight dehydration, they'll put a patient on a ventilator to support their lungs, maybe use activated charcoal to absorb any toxin left in the stomach. Really, it becomes a desperate race against time, just trying to keep the body alive long enough so that it can hopefully, maybe, fight off the poison on its own. The castor bean plant is just such a perfect example of a paradox in nature. It's a source of both healing through its oil and death through its seeds. It's a pretty powerful reminder that even the most ordinary-looking things can hide extraordinary dangers. And that kind of leaves us with one last thought. If a common garden plant can be a biological weapon, what other secrets are just hiding out there in plain sight?